Hello, today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-filled review on Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, Book 2 in the Stormlight Archive. Warning, if you have not yet read these books, they will be spoiled for you, so go read these books. Alright, let's get into it. So I'll start with talking about the characters, beginning with Shalyn. Now I think Shalyn grows a lot as a character in this book. Part of that is because Yasna is no longer there to sort of help guide her and also sort of restrain her from like making dumb decisions and hopefully learning from them. And yeah, so she really grows a lot in this book because she's able to like not break free from Yasna, but um she's able to sort of progress and find herself because Yasna is not there. Um, and in doing so, she sort of gets into a lot of bad situations, but at the same time, she manages to get herself out of them, and she makes some pretty bad decisions, but at the same time, she learns a lot and grows a lot as a character. Um, Another thing I really found interesting was her relationship, specifically Pattern. I love Pattern. His dialogue is some of my favorite in the book. I think it's one of them. When Pattern is talking, you can pretty much always tell Pattern is talking. Even though I've never listened to the audiobooks, I read Pattern's voice in a distinct voice. I mean, I do that for most characters, but especially Pattern, I feel like has such good dialogue. Also, I liked Shalyn's relationship with Adolin, and seeing that progress and sort of Sanderson doesn't do the best romance, but I think theirs is pretty good, especially for Sanderson. Lastly, just seeing her stumble her way through the book is a little sad and also entertaining. Not that she does a bad job, she does really well considering her life beforehand, but it's just every time she makes a decision to like keep going with the Ghost Bloods or with I forget. I'm not entirely sure I say her name, but like Teen, um, which kind of reminds me of Tien or Calvin's brother. But that's besides the point. Anyway, I think Shalyn's a really good character in this book. Actually, surprisingly good. Especially she wasn't a bad character last book. I actually quite liked her, but she's just progressed so much in this book, and I think Sanderson did a great job. All right, moving on to Kaladin. Now, I've always loved Kaladin. I've been his biggest fan since, probably not. I doubt I'm his biggest fan, considering how many people there are who are Kaladin fans. But I've always been a big fan of Kaladin. Now, a couple of things I want to touch on about Kaladin in this book are, first of all, what I don't like. What I don't like about Kaladin isn't so much about like how Brandon Sanderson did a bad job writing, and more so personal preference. I find sometimes it can be a little hard to read some of his lower chapters. Now, I still think they're good chapters and I still enjoy them, but it can be quite gloomy at times. Another thing is I just don't like Moash. And then not just in the way that like, oh, screw you, Moash. It's more like, I just don't see what Kaladin was thinking, really, with Moash. Partly in that he's being untrue to himself in a way, because one of Kaladin's big things is protecting people, right? That's part of the Windrunner ideals, and that's just part of who Kaladin is. That's how he's always been. And then you see him sort of trying to, like, getting corrupted by Moash, but also I get that he's had a lot done to him by the Light Eyes, but I just don't think that Moash's influence over Kaladin is really that, not necessarily believable, but it doesn't seem like that consistent with other times with Kaladin where he's so true to himself and him sort of lying to himself. I mean, part of that is what he's getting over, but I just don't see it. I don't really like it as much, but I still think it's well done for the most part. Lastly, I don't know. I really like Syl. I like a lot of Bridge 4. I think Kaladin's a great character. He has a great cast surrounding him, and also it's really cool to see how he interacts with Dalinar. And it's also really cool to see him through another character's eyes. Because when we're in Kaladin's head, it's so... Another thing Brandon Sanderson does a good job at is writing characters from their perspective. And I think that's something that he does especially well with Kaladin. And seeing Kaladin from other characters' perspective is really interesting. And I think that's a sign that Brandon Sanderson is doing a good job, because you see two kind of different characters, but they're the same person, just from one's perspective versus another's. And that's true with almost probably all well-written multiple POV stories. So good job, Brandon Sanderson. I really like Kaladin. I really like his story in this book. It might be my least favorite book for Kaladin, just because I feel for him a lot, but I still think it was amazing. Alright, moving on to Adolin. Now, I don't have too much to say on Adolin, mostly that he's really, really likable. He's a well-written character. He's not quite the most nuanced in the story, but he's getting there, and mainly I just want to talk about him killing Sadeas, because I think that was a big moment for a couple of reasons. One, obviously Sadeas has been a big enemy of Dalinar's and of the war, like, actually progressing, and just kind of an absolutely terrible person. And that moment was partly satisfying because, oh yay, Sadeas is dead, he sucked. But part of it was seeing Adolin do something morally wrong, because for most of the book the books so far, he's sort of been put up by his father as like the best person there is, and yet seeing him do something so wrong, yet also so right, was kind of hard to believe at first. But like rereading, you can definitely see Adolin's anger show a bit more earlier on in the story. So seeing that anger finally it kind of explode, was a little surprising, but then made sense. And yeah, seeing him sort of defy his father's expectations of him was pretty satisfying too, because I'll get into this more on Dalinar, but I do like Dalinar, but at the same time, he's a terrible father in a lot of ways, and seeing Adolin sort of step up for himself and for what he thinks is right in a way was satisfying. So yeah, let's move on to Dalinar, because I have some things to say. Now, Dalinar is probably the most nuanced character in the Stormlight Archive. I like him, but he's probably my least favorite of the main characters, for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've already talked about how bad of a father is to Adolin, and we're not even talking about the past stuff. Or what I really want to talk about is how he expects so much of Adolin, and yet, yes, he's willing to give a lot himself, but at the same time, he's not very compromising, and expecting so much of Adolin to be better than him and like as a person, it's unfair to Adolin, and it's also it's just not good. More on that, he just kind of takes, and he takes and he takes and he takes, and even though he's trying to do good, he's still just sort of trying to do good his way, and always his way, and he tries to listen, and he tries to do all these things that would make him better, but he kind of just fails a lot. Not to say he's a bad person, at least not currently, but I have a lot of issues with him, but I still think he's a really well-written character. I think Sanderson does a great job with writing Dalinar to be this person who is problematic in a lot of ways, yet also kind of the solution to a lot of things, and I think it's really well done. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say on Dalinar, and most of the characters. Oh right, I should give it a rating. I think the characters are really well done. I'm gonna give Sanderson a 9.5 out of 10 on characters. The only thing that really takes away from the 10 out of 10 is because the 10 out of 10 to me, it's not quite perfection, because there is no such thing as perfection. There is, but it's a concept. It's not something that could be a reality. There's just a little nuance lacking. There's a little bit of, mainly the dialogue too. I feel like that's sort of on the line between characters and writing, but I think the dialogue is just not unique enough, if that makes any sense, for each character. I feel like sometimes when seeing their talking being written out, you can really tell who's talking. And meanwhile, with Sanderson, I feel a lot of the time, most of his characters speak quite similarly. And yeah, I think the characters are, for the most part, well done. The dialogue could definitely be improved a little. And then also, 10 out of 10 for me is Hob. Sanderson is no Hob at characters. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about Hob, I might want to take it down to 9.25. Which I will do, yeah. Sanderson's no Hob. Hob is a 10 out of 10, or Martin is a 10 out of 10 for me with characters. And Sanderson is very good at making you feel things for characters, but he's not as good as the nuance and really getting to realistic characters as much. So he's good in a lot of aspects, but I think characters are definitely really good, but not quite to the amazing standpoint. So 9.25 for characters. All right, let's move on. As far as Sanderson's books go, this might be the best one as far as the plot and pacing go. I think, especially out of Stormlight Archive, this one is near perfection. The pacing is pretty good. The plot is just, the story is incredible. There are so many great moments. There are so many good things that happen. Not necessarily good for the characters or good for this, but like well done things. I don't want to dive too deeply into this, but I think the plot and the pacing were done really well in this book. 9.75 out of 10. I think a 10 out of 10 for me is the Storm of Swords. So this isn't quite 10 out of 10, but it's really, really close. So yeah, let's move on to the world. I personally think Sanderson is the best at world building that is alive today. Now, he's not the only great person at world building, but the way he just incorporates the world building into the story, and because that's the thing. It's not just, oh, is the world building great? It's, is the world building great, and does it impact the story, and does it make the book better? And I think Sanderson is the best at making the world building make the book better. I think he does a great job with making it interesting, in depth for the most part, and also important to the story and the narrative. And that is why I'm going to give the world building a 10 out of 10, because I think it is just some of the best world building that there is. All right, moving on to the writing. Now, this is where it is going to go downhill a little bit for Sanderson. I think Sanderson's writing is good. It's above average, I think. It's not terrible. It helps you read the story. I think the one thing that Sanderson does a great job on with writing is really showing you stuff through the character's eyes, and not necessarily as well as some other people like Hob Martin, but he does do a good job of making the POVs feel different from one another. But for the most part, his actual sentence writing is okay, a little bit above average, maybe like a 6. But with the character writing in mind, I'll give him a 7 on writing. Not that I have like the authority to give out any real awards. I'm just trying to review a little bit and talk a little bit about books. So yeah, I'm gonna give writing overall a 7. I think above average for the most part. Good character writing, and yeah, moving on to the last bit, which is me overall talking a little bit about the book. So overall, this book gets an 8.875, a wonderful score for a wonderful book. I hope you enjoyed this review. I love this book. I hope you do too. Comment your thoughts maybe if you want to. And yeah, until next time, farewell.